Welcome to another episode of A Come Together. One. Here we are, sitting outside, eating lunch, 84 degrees, sunny.
Time.
You got sunglasses on.
It was snowing in Maryland. It has been snowing in Maryland. My
What happened
dad.
with that plane crash?
It was in DC.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So Maryland, snow.
My dad goes, "You're probably so jealous right now." I go, "No, it's 80-something degrees here."
Yeah. It's nice. You know what's nice? Consequence-free snow. Where you don't have to
Right.
shovel and you don't have anywhere to go.
It's pretty to look at for a day.
Yeah, my dad. Even that's not even if it's like backyard snow is always great snow growing up. You know, like it would get annoying when you're going to shul, you're going to street, and like you go, it's like or you're going to school and like you can't walk down the block 'cause it's all ice and it's whatever. But if you were, if you had the backyard free, then were you a big snowman builder?
I sledded.
Oh, you sledded.
We had a great hill for sledding.
Nice.
Trees in the way.
Not too many trees in the way?
There was trees.
Oh, with trees in the way. It's part of the experience.
Yeah.
You're like Calvin Hobbes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also, football in the snow.
Football in the snow, snowball fights.
Yeah, but I was never good at making snowballs.
What do you mean? You just pack it together and just throw it.
Yeah, but like
You wanted the form. You wanted like the globe snowball. Yeah. Yeah, comics kind of ruined that for me because I could never get them to look as good as they did in like the comics, or
Right.
animation. I'm like, it's always disappointing when you try to make a snowman and it's so far from like a satisfyingly round.
That was in 6th grade. We had like a week and a half off of school for snow.
Yeah,
We had, like blizzards within 3 days of each other.
it's crazy.
Like 3-foot storms.
Yeah, I don't remember having too many of those in New York. There was ones where it got scary, where like you lost power and like power lines were down everywhere, and like you got the sensation like we're not equipped for this. Like we're not ready to deal with this amount of snow in our infrastructure. But yeah, I'm not jealous at all of the snow.
Nope.
I used to be, and I got fully. I think I'm fully adjusted. Like as far as I'm concerned, we just had winter. That was a good winter.
That was 2 weeks. Sorry.
Okay.
2 weeks, 55 degrees.
That was more than well, no. Because starting from even like late October, at night it would go down to the 60s and 50s. We had 2 weeks of it was like cold, like in like the low 50s.
In January.
Yeah. But like I think that if it's 85 degrees every day and then it's 65 degrees or whatever, it kind of feels it's a pretty significant difference.
Right.
I'm not I really didn't like it at first. When I first moved here, it really, really bothered me that there was no seasons. And like there was no fall, there was no like leaves falling down.
Yeah, but you're so comfortable.
Yeah, dude.
All right.
Living here is great. So, dude,
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Of course, dude. I mean, it's so funny because every time we're supposed to be learning in the morning, like we just end up podcasting essentially, and then realizing that we have no time, and there's so many things we want to elaborate on, and then we feel guilty we haven't learned, and we have to rain check, and we have to make it happen.
Yeah.
So where do you want to begin?
Up to you. We have to talk about the Bolsheviks.
Yes.
Israel.
Yes.
In the Middle East.
Yes.
What else? They all kind of loop together.
They kind of do. Yeah. Why don't we start with So you've been reading World War II history. Tell me, you told me earlier today about the book that you were reading. Fan. You're a big World War II. Oh, not a fan of it. A fan of studying it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, no. I'm a big. I find. Let me say this. I find World War II to be extremely interesting to read about, to learn about how it happened, what happened. Like, I want to learn more about it rather than other things that I've learned about in my history classes where I was like, okay, I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
No offense.
Yeah.
Because also the impact that World War II had on the entire world. And I think World War II, this is a great segue into Israel. It can be.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to talk about World War II, you can go back to the Bolsheviks because...
The Bolsheviks, so you were telling me Just to get clear.
Yeah.
So World War One, Germany loses.
Officially, yes, but it's kind of it's a low key conspiracy theory
Why?
because the actual war itself, it was a standstill. World War One is famous for being a standstill, where nobody was really gaining ground on each other. It was called trench warfare. So everybody dug in their trenches
Yeah.
and shot at each other. And someone maybe would make some ground, then they would get pushed back. Like, and it's not like World War II where Hitler ran in and conquered Poland, then France, and was taking
Right.
land.
Right.
Nobody was taking territory in World War One.
Interesting. So Jewish people dying. What were they fighting about in World War One?
You're really pushing my memory back.
That's crazy, but it's crazy. I don't even know that.
It was there were four main factors that just like started a war. It was that's gonna drive me crazy. Like nationalism.
Nationalism and who's part? Like who started the war? How did it start?
Officially, it started when the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria was shot and killed.
In Austria.
In Austria, he was shot by somebody. And
From another country?
From another country, yeah, Serbia. He was shot by a Serbian.
So there was like an actual like political assassination of a leader in the country.
Political assassination. What happened was, one of the main causes was nationalism. So all the European countries were so full of themselves and Gaivadik
Right.
that they were becoming the top dog. You know,
How do you translate Gaivadik? It's
arrogant.
Arrogant, right? Yeah, yeah.
So like Germany and Italy, say World War II started with World War I in 1914. And in the late 1800s, Germany and Italy officially became countries, and France was feeling great. England's feeling like they're all
A lot of sense of
they want to
self.
show that they are the top country and they want to be that superpower. So something was bound to get them fighting.
It's so interesting. The idea of like, if I wanted to succeed as an individual, I want to succeed relative to myself, and like just try to keep on getting better.
Right.
I have a very difficult time comparing myself to other people, and part of the reason I think is I know I guess is first of all, when you compare yourself to other people, resentment pops up, and jealousy pops up, and then you almost don't have goodwill for other people that you're comparing yourself to.
Right, but when you look at today's geopolitical structure,
Yeah.
you see how much power how much influence a superpower holds.
Yes.
So they wanted that back then.
Right.
These European countries wanted to install themselves.
And the reason why is because, again, power just equals resources, influence.
Exactly.
And
there's also colonialism. So at this point, a lot of these European countries were taking over land in Africa and Asia and whatnot in order, again, to build that power and influence.
It's so interesting that was a philosophy.
So that's how colonialism. That's how South Africa became under Britain. Libya, I think, was under France.
And to get us started, by the way, the whole Middle East was under British or Ottomans.
And then
British.
The Ottomans also a big. The British took over from the Ottomans.
Yeah.
So this Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Austria-Hungary. Austria-Hungary, they were partners with Germany at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They were allies. So this guy was killed by a Serb. So Germany kind of winked over to Austria-Hungary, go, hey, they killed your guy. Let's go get them back.
Wow.
So they declared war, then they declared war, then it's just a domino effect of declaring war.
Wow, really?
Yeah. But nobody was actually gaining so much territory.
And it's so interesting because if colonialism was their philosophy, you would think that it would be more focused, like there'd be more of an emphasis on, trying to conquer different lands. Like you'd expect borders to be pushed, and you'd expect.
Right, but when you conquer, sorry to interrupt. When you conquer Britain and France, you conquer their territory also. Ish.
Yeah, of course, but trench warfare is not the way to conquer more land. It might be a way to tire a nation out or get them poor or deplete the resources, right? But everyone got depleted, right?
Yeah, everyone was depleted. Everyone was dying, and
so terrible.
It was kind of like Russia backed out really quickly because they had their own internal issues going on, and they showed.
And that was the Bolsheviks, right?
Oh, then the Bolsheviks took over.
Oh, they had their own problems, and a solution to that problems
with the Bolsheviks.
Right. And what was their philosophy?
Communism.
And Bolsheviks was a group of people? Was it a person?
I think it was like a group.
How'd they come up with that name?
It might have been somebody, but it really comes back from Karl Marx.
It all comes back to Karl Marx.
Yeah, Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, by the way, it's giving us a bad rap
It
now.
gave
It's
very
coming to
bad
bite us.
rap.
It's coming to bite us in the ass. Today.
Yep, a little bit. So like the Russians, militarily they weren't so strong, so they were mad about that. And when they dropped out of the war, they're inside the country. They were like, okay, we suck.
Yeah.
Let's we're an embarrassment to the world stage. So the Russian Revolution happened years later, and Lenin and the Bolsheviks created the USSR, the Communist
Gotcha.
State of Russia.
And they were, like they conquered everyone around them, right?
No, they had a lot of land in Eastern Europe. They lost it, I think, because they lost the war.
Lost
So
World War One. Wait.
World War
So
One,
what land did they have that they lost? It was
like Ukrainian territory,
okay.
Poland,
Okay.
Romania.
Gotcha. But that was all
Lithuania.
originally under the Bolshevik rule of the
No,
USSR.
it was all part of Russia. Then, after the Russian Revolution, after World War One, those states were independent.
Interesting. And okay. Gotcha.
Then, after World War Two, the USSR took over those countries pretty much.
So what? So the Bolsheviks ran it for those 40, 50 years between.
They ran Russia itself.
Yeah, for those 30 years between World War One and World War Two.
Yeah, so it was the USSR. So Lenin was the first guy who was in charge. Then he died, and Stalin took over in the late 20s.
Mm-hmm. And that's why they changed St. Petersburg to Leningrad and
Stalingrad.
and then Leningrad.
Those are two different cities.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh. Gotcha.
Leningrad, I think, is south. Like, I think Russia's like this huge cloud.
Yeah.
Leningrad's like closer, I think, to Asia. Part
Okay.
of Russia. Stalingrad, I believe, is closer to Moscow.
Isn't it crazy how just like
It was.
was, right? But how many people from how many different races in different parts of the world speak Russian because of how close proximity that Russia is so enormous to to other.
Well, these countries do have their own language, but between 1945 and 1992, it was all Russian.
Gotcha. And that's how long the U.S. that 1945 to 1992
Is the Cold War.
was the Cold War. But who was running that? Who was running Russia at the point? That was
USSR.
USSR.
USSR ran from 1919 to 1992.
Wow. So like almost a full century.
Yes. It was the United Socialist Soviet Republic.
Gotcha. Wow.
And Stalin then like purged everybody, super neurotic, 4'6".
When you
Stash.
he was 4'6".
4'6".
4'6". I mean,
Something like that. 4'8".
Really?
Maybe 5 foot.
he's tiny.
I think he was tiny. You can correct. I might be wrong.
Like a little person. Is that what?
He was not a little person, but he was.
Why 5 feet? I think under 5. I think under 5'1" or 5'2" for a male is considered a little person.
Maybe he was 5'4". He was under the average height for a male.
Right. So was Napoleon.
Right. Exactly.
Can you imagine all these leaders just started because of inferiority complex?
Right. They were so short. They had to show the strength.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's also just so weird. Like I was talking to my cousin, and he's telling me as a friend that was always very insecure and didn't have a lot of self confidence. And he said he moved to Florida. He hasn't seen him in a while, and he came to visit him, and he like beefed up. He got like jacked. He's like, wow, look at this guy. This guy is so impressive. He goes, and then we went out, and he went out, we went to a bar or whatever, and he's like, and watching him interact socially is like exactly the same. He's like, no matter how much you beefed up, no matter how much he did, like he's like, he didn't like resolve that thing that made him insecure.
And all these leaders, they found their own way of being an average Joe and not having any special traits to like taking over. Like Hitler was an art student.
Was it what?
Hitler wanted to be an artist.
Really?
Yeah.
And then?
He failed out of art school.
Really?
Yeah. In Austria.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. Rumor has it he blamed that on the Jews.
I bet. Could have been the Jews' fault, by the way.
It might have been.
Right? Like at the end of the day, like if there was a principal of the school that was Jewish, he was like,
right.
Listen, I don't want this guy. I don't want my school.
There's also a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not that either his mother's doctor or his grandmother's doctor was Jewish, and they died.
I don't know, man. It's such a stretch to blame an entire.
Oh, for sure. But whatever he
did.
Anyway,
so the book you were reading was that post World War II.
It took me. I mean,
during World War II?
Yeah, these are Nazi soldiers during World War II going through their state of mind as they're carrying out atrocities.
Right. Right. And complying.
And what went in that decision to comply, and some backed out. that some of these guys were given the option to back out. Others were not. Others,
It's really interesting that they're even given the option to back out.
I think this general that I was reading about felt so inhumane about it.
Well, it was inhumane.
Obviously, yeah.
Right.
You know, and he drank himself to sleep, whatever,
Every day.
like every day, because of it. He gave his guys an out. Some took it, and others were so committed to the ideology that no, we're going to do this.
Right.
But like you never hear what was actually going through their minds.
Yeah, you don't. And it's also because it's still so fresh in like history. You know, like
It's very fresh. I mean,
there are a lot of
people-
Holocaust survivors still alive today. Not tons. You know, not nearly as many
tens
as
of thousands,
Tens of thousands. You think?
maybe 10,000.
I think that if you
much,
were
for
if
sure.
you were old enough to have a memory of the Holocaust,
Fine, that's getting yeah,
then you had to have been born in the
30s.
20s or 30s. Yeah.
If you were in 1935, you probably have some of a memory.
Yeah, you do. Right.
That person's age is 90,
Yeah.
turning 90.
Yeah. And I mean, how many people make it to 90 is the question.
Right.
You know, and you think tens of thousands of, I mean,
There's definitely still a population.
yeah, for sure. I just remember like growing up that it was very much part of the education, the curriculum.
For sure.
And a
Diversity.
big part of it was getting Holocaust survivors to speak and
Sure.
books, and you know, and you don't have as much of that, and obviously it's just because of time, you know.
Unfortunately, where I'm from, there was one program that it was an annual Holocaust survivor program, but I
Mhm.
guess the amount of survivors
Was it
unfortunately-
names, not numbers? What was it?
No, it's just the show did it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It became so hard to get a survivor. They brought a non-Jewish guy who lived with his family in, I want to say, Thailand, who just lived under the Japanese rule
Instead,
instead of a Jew who actually survived the Holocaust.
was this guy anywhere near Germany or Poland or Ukraine in World War II?
No, I think they were an American family that ended up moving to Thailand or somewhere in East Asia
So why'd they bring them?
because he survived the war under Japanese rule.
Oh, interesting. I guess that works. My grandfather survived under Soviet rule. My grandfather,
Your grandfather's Jewish.
yeah, I think so. His town, that he was a Polish town, border of Russia, and historically, constantly, basically, there's a river on the eastern edge of town,
Right.
And the river was generally speaking like historically for X amount of years. I mean, I don't know whether it's dozens or hundreds of years, but would constantly go back and forth between being Russian territory and European territory, I guess. And during World War II, once the war broke out, the Russians came, conquered that town, but my grandfather's family felt lucky because they'd heard about what the Germans were doing. It's like, oh, sweet, the Russians are here, you know, which like is a crazy thing to think, like
Right.
to think, oh, sweet, the Russians are here. So they got taken to a Russian labor camp,
Oy.
and that was pretty miserable too, you know.
Sure.
I think I mean, he lost a lot of family. He had, I think, typhus the whole time, and it's actually it's so interesting because I didn't even I have to revisit. He wrote a book.
Your grandfather did.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
called Little Miracles, about like his experience. And it's actually an awfully written book, but because he writes it like as dry as
Right.
could possibly be. Like my Saba knew a ton. He was brilliant and he was funny, he was expressive, but he just was a very like old school writer in the sense of like, in 1993 I was 4.
Right.
My mother used to hit me, you know, like I
Right,
remember,
right.
you know, like, I don't, he didn't write that, but, so it's a hard book to get through, but also like he would tell me stories like after the war ended, where they went to a labor camp and I didn't understand like how he got there. And he's like, oh yeah, we're close to China. And I'm like, but how? He's like in Kazakhstan or something like that. And like I didn't know geography. I didn't know I didn't understand what the whole map was,
Right.
you know, of that part of the world. And I just well,
You're a good son.
oh yeah, great. I'm getting great, son.
I think we both are.
We both are, yeah. If you want to slide out even more, you could get smack into the middle of it.
Oh, it's okay.
What did you think of Puerto Rico?
Awesome.
Amazing.
Awesome.
You go back?
Easily.
Out of 10, what would you rate your experience?
15 and a half.
Out of 10?
Yeah. The best thing is it's such an easy trip.
Yeah.
It's America.
They still have customs, right?
No.
Are you sure?
You're
It's a
flying from the U.S.
territory.
You're flying from the U.S. If you fly from the U.S., there's no customs.
Okay.
So you fly in. You don't have to exchange currency. Most people there speak English.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous country.
Is it a country?
Sorry, island, state,
Of course,
whatever.
island. Territory.
Territory.
I feel like a territory sounds so primal.
I learned people there, whoever's born in Puerto Rico lives there, is considered a U.S. citizen, but they are not
Have to pay
granted
taxes.
right, and they're not granted all 10 Bill of Rights.
Yeah, because they don't pay taxes.
Right.
By the way, I think I would trade that. You think you would trade? You think you would trade a couple of bills of rights to not pay
The
taxes?
thing is, their government can only do so much because they're under the scope of the U.S. government.
Right.
So like, there's only so much.
And no one's saying that they're in open air prison.
For sure not. We saw signs, like end the colonization.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
they don't want to be. They don't want to be under American.
I think it's either make us or the 51st state and give us a full Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Let's be our own country.
Yeah.
Because to give them,
how come you don't hear about that?
Some rights, it's not in the news so much. It's there. If you Google Puerto Rican colony, it's a very hidden issue. They can't vote in elections. They can only vote in the primaries.
Okay.
It's a very hidden issue.
Wow.
Not hidden, but like it exists.
Yeah, but it's not. Up. Yeah, but I don't know why it shouldn't be. It's in our backyard.
Exactly, and we are considered a colonial power. Guam's the same way.
Guam.
But like the island's beautiful.
What is Guam French? Do they speak French?
I think it's closer to Asia.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the U.S. kept it for military purposes from World War II.
Right. They did a couple of places, right?
Puerto Rico was taken in the Spanish-American War in the 1890s.
Gotcha. Wow, you got great history.
Also, I Googled these things last week.
Oh, did you? Why, you were just interested?
I remembered hearing about it. I forgot some of these things. I forgot what exactly Puerto Ricans can and can't do. But the island's gorgeous. There's kosher food.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is super cheap.
Yeah.
We went to the grocery store because they have an American-style grocery store. It's called Pueblo, so it's like Spanish, but like all American brands. Nothing's over $5. We took an Uber.
That's so crazy.
There were no Ubers that we paid for over $11. At the kosher restaurant, nothing was over $20.
So what do they get by being in American territory? Do they get?
I think
you get protection. Like
I think you get FEMA.
Okay.
I think you can get national emergency funding. They get hurricanes.
Yeah, for sure.
You know.
I'm sure they're protected militarily.
And they're considered citizens, U.S. citizens.
But they can't vote.
You can vote in primaries.
What's the difference between a primary and a regular vote?
I mean, you can't vote between Trump and Kamala.
So you can vote for everyone else.
Correct. No, I mean you can't vote.
You vote local.
You can't vote November 4th presidential election, but you can vote in a Puerto Rican primary to take the next step in the nominee.
I'm gonna ask you some questions about how the government works because there are a lot of things I don't understand.
But Puerto Rico, fantastic.
Amazing.
Flying there from Fort Lauderdale, super cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An Airbnb, you said.
Airbnb
better than a hotel.
We would love to be able to afford to stay in a hotel.
Not even, but it's more convenient in an Airbnb. You know what I think?
Space.
You have more space. You have a kitchen.
However, when you're in a country like that does have a lot of poverty, it's really a toss up in the air.
Yeah, what it's gonna be like.
What I saw so many Airbnbs that people complaining about cockroaches, and the electricity in Puerto Rico is also super hit or miss.
Really?
So a hotel is probably a little more stable, but in an Airbnb, you're not as stable.
Really? Like your AC might just shut off in the middle of the night?
Yeah, our lights were flickering at some points.
Right.
It was the middle of the day,
right.
Or electricity was flickering. So you have those kinds of things.
Right.
And you don't know what area you're in, whatever. But we paid $150 for an Airbnb per night.
Awesome. Hotels are more than that?
Hotels are $300
a night.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Chabad had a discount.
I would never. I can't imagine paying $300 a night for a hotel. Dude.
No. Especially you're not eating there.
It's not worth it.
The Chabad has discounts with hotels, 10-20%. But our building had a pool. You had a kitchen, a full bedroom, a living room, and a balcony.
Awesome. That's all you need, dude. It's a honeymoon.
Exactly. So 10 out of 10 recommend.
Wow.
So much to do. There's a rainforest.
I'm gonna go.
There's a great rainforest an hour away. There's a blue.
I know. Did you notice that there's constantly clouds over just the rainforest because of all the what is it called? The
altitude?
No, it's from all the trees.
Oh, maybe.
So yeah, okay.
There's glow in the dark kayaking.
That's cool, really.
The water has something in it that lights up at night.
Have you ever done the glass bottom boats? I always feel like I want to try them. You never heard of those? You go to I think it's more for closer to the shore, like closer to the beach,
Oh,
but
maybe.
like where you could like a lot of where you could see a lot of tropical fish in clear waters, and they have
Right.
a glass bottom, kayak or paddleboat or little boat, whatever,
Right.
and you could just see straight down,
Right.
and just see what's going on below you.
It's awesome.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's so easy. Also, there's so many parts of the island that are gorgeous. Like you have to get through it. There's separate islands off of Puerto Rico that you can get to that are even more gorgeous.
Really?
Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
do you get there? You like take a boat?
You ferry or you can fly.
Yeah.
There's like little seaplanes, whatever.
Yeah.
Like we met a couple there in our building. They said, yeah, we were supposed to be here 3 weeks. We extended another 3 weeks.
No way, really?
They saw that we're Jewish and like, you from Brooklyn. Nope, live in Hollywood, Florida.
Right. Well, it's the next most Jewish place. If it's
Exactly.
not New York, it's Florida.
Exactly.
Right. At least according to all the stereotypes,
100% recommend.
which exist for a reason. I gotta go. I went there 2 years ago. I loved it. I went with my family, and it's really nice. We didn't leave the hotel much. We went to the old city part, like the actual like town.
Old San Juan.
Yeah, Old San Juan.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was really
Yeah.
cool to walk around.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
very cultural. The people there are also very nice,
I wasn't as culturally mature, or sophisticated, or aware,
as you are now.
or curious as I am now.
Right.
Um, I've noticed that I have to practice curiosity. Like I have to
You
like
seem like a
almost.
very curious person. I don't know, like.
I try to be. I have to force myself
Yeah.
to be. My friend Shua, that you met.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about him is that he's like naturally an incredibly curious person
Right.
about everything, and because of that, he's actually an enormous wealth of information.
Right.
Because he always just asks
Researches.
more. He's always curious. He always just wants to know, and like he like is genuine. Like
Right.
he really wants to know,
Right.
and it's such a great personality trait. And like he's in med school, and I'm like, well, how is he? He's like, well, I just like it was hard. Like it's a lot of work. He goes, but I just love I love learning about this stuff. Like
Right.
it's so interesting, And
You want to talk about the government?
yes, I do want to talk about the government. Because there are a lot of things that I don't know how they work and that I hear about happen.
Sure.
What's when you vote every 2 years?
Right.
Is it for the Senate or the House?
Either. Both, kind of, sometimes. The House election.
Okay.
The House is made up. The Congress is made up of the House Representatives and the Senate.
That's Congress, House of Representatives, and the Senate.
To be representative, those elections are every 2 years.
And then the Senate's every 6 years?
Yes. So sometimes they
And they do that to keep people from overextending their stay past a president, and then incentivize them to still do good work.
You can run more than once.
How many times is there a term limit? Amount of times that you could run?
I'm not sure. There might not be.
Well, I mean, I feel like Mitch McConnell would have gone to that point already, right?
Yeah, him and Lindsey Graham have been senators forever.
Yeah.
I mean, 6 years is a long time, so it might be their second term.
But really, you think it's only 12 years?
There might not be a term limit either. They overlap. But
Okay,
they
so
want
the Senate's
yeah.
every 2 years, the House is every 6 years.
Yeah,
Sometimes they overlap because gotcha.
and ideally the House, the balance of power, separation of power, is always evolving.
So a president could win the Senate when he wins the election, and then lose the Senate 2 years into their election if
Yeah.
they don't do a good job.
Yes.
Does that happen often?
Yes.
It does.
Yes. Not often, but it happened.
Okay.
I mean, it happened under Obama last time I remember.
Gotcha. So Obama
Depends how you
had
do it.
a left or a right.
When Obama won in 08, Obama's a Democrat.
Yeah.
When he won in 08, he had a Democratic House and Democratic Senate. So he had the entire Congress,
Right.
meaning the Democrats could pass
That's what
pretty
Trump
much.
has now.
Yeah, except for Republicans.
Except Republicans who also disagree with him.
No, I mean, it's just a Republican.
Oh, yes, it's a
Yeah.
Republican version of this, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, gotcha.
So since then, the Democrats had a large majority in the House. Senate always went back and forth. But if you have
How important is it to have the Senate be in your favor?
they're both crucial.
Okay.
Because you want legislation to be passed, it has to pass through both.
Both of them. So let's say, so these confirmation hearings, right?
Yeah.
When let's say Kennedy got approved by the Senate, then it went to Congress.
No, I think there's a specific committee. When you're on the Senate, you have to be part of committees.
When you're what? When you're on the Senate, you're part of committees also.
That's part of the
That's
job.
part of your responsibility. Like,
Yeah.
just like if you're in a college, you teach and you do research.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So one of the committees I think is these hearing committees, confirmation committees, whatever.
And who runs those committees?
I don't know how it's decided, but people are placed on these committees.
How big are they, and how do you decide whether they're all Republican or all Democrat or all?
It's bipartisan for sure.
It has to be bipartisan.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
but like
So there's a Senate confirmation hearings.
yes, there's no House confirmation. I don't think it's House confirmation.
Why not?
Senate, because I think the House has their own committees. The Senate's also more chashuv.
Gotcha.
Like we don't not care what the House says, but there are points where the Senate just has more power.
Really? So if it came down, so that could the Senate could the Senate convince the House or lobby to the House to pass something if they're having a hard time do it because they're the Senate, they're like bigger.
I think if you're gonna pass legislation, like actual law, it has to go through both.
Yeah, but if let's say the House is holding it up
Right.
because they're not sure about it, the Senate could come along and say, "Hey guys, we're the Senate, and like we really think like this is a good idea," and like pressure them to do it.
Yeah, but then that might not do so much because like it is a balance of powers.
Right. It's so great how much balance there is.
Right, and as well, it sounds like they don't have that so much.
No. No, but they're only 70 years old. They'll get it soon.
Right, but like that's why the Constitution was made the way it is to avoid
How is it? How are they so? How did they come up with such a complicated and brilliant system? Like, just so well right off the bat. It's so crazy.
They're just constantly evolving, and they also saw what failed.
Right. They have a lot of things. They had a lot of things to learn from.
Like the Articles of Confederation were the first government that we had.
And what was that?
It was a pre-Constitution constitution.
And that was freedom of speech, freedom of religion. No,
none of that.
So what was that?
It was
Just that America is its own country.
When America declared independence and won the war. They founded the Articles of Constitution, which I think, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think this is what it was. Under British rule, it was like the monarchy. So whatever the federal British government said, that's what happened. The U.S. was like, well, that sucked.
Yeah.
So we should do our own thing.
Right.
And do it the opposite way. So the states are going to have the say.
Okay.
Each state will do its own thing, but like still be part of one system.
So the Articles of Confederation. What's the definition of a confederation? A collection of people?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so Articles of Confederation is basically an Articles of Independence of small independent governments.
That's make up of one large government.
Right.
But there was no.
There's very little federal government. Right.
Right.
There was no federal government.
It really wasn't, and they were seeing that this wasn't working. The economy wasn't growing. People didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, because we're a brand new nation.
Exactly. So it was like, okay, well, nobody had answers for anything. So they decided.
So how do you figure that stuff out?
So they realized
you observe you don't have how do you even collect data? Like you don't have.
They saw what wasn't working. Also, there was.
I know, but this is what year? What year is this?
The late 1780s, 1790s.
Gotcha. And they don't have a president. They didn't want a president.
Washington. They wanted Washington to be king. He said no because like.
Wanted to be king.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
And he said, "I don't want to be a king."
No, he was like that. Last system kind of didn't work out for us.
Right.
So no. Then the founding fathers kind of came together, or the writers of the Constitution. There were also two camps. There was pro-federalism and anti-federalism.
Okay.
The pro-federal,
even within America.
Yes. One side was we should make a constitution, make a federal government, and the other side was like, no, that sucked from 20 years ago.
Wow.
Because one side
so they just wanted independent states that agreed to help one another and basically collaborate together.
Exactly. But it wasn't working. So one side said, no, we need a federal government to take charge and kind of be that overruling body.
Wow. And that's how Republican and Democratic like perspectives began?
Somewhat.
Okay.
So like they decided that this needs one side said we need to have a federal system.
Yeah.
The other side said no, the states need to run it because again the British rule wasn't good for us. So what they do? Asked the Gemara. What happened was they compromised and agreed to put a Bill of Rights in there, meaning one side said a federal government is going to infringe on our personal rights and it's going to become a dictatorship. So they came together and said, we're going to install...
What are the non-negotiables that you need for the federal government to not be able to do so that you could feel like... I'm sorry, that's what...
the Bill of Rights.
That's what the Bill of Rights is.
So
the Bill of Rights is for people to say... It was for the people that were afraid that the federal government would yes. prevent them from being individuals.
Exactly. So then we said, here's the 10 rights.
I think they were smart about that.
The government cannot infringe on this.
Right.
You cannot infringe my freedom of speech.
And that's why the amendments are so important.
Yes.
Wow.
And the original was just 10. So they ratified the Constitution.
Wow.
And the Constitution then enabled a federal government, a federal government which consists of the Supreme Court, legislative branch, and the executive branch, which is the president. Washington was enabled the first president, and Washington said there should be no political parties because it will lead to destruction. We should not be involved in foreign wars. We should be one unified nation because it will come back to bite us in the tushy.
Really?
Yes.
I gotta pee. Hang on 1 second.
Democracy, republic staying into republic, and then political parties started later on. But we never
And democracy is just is democracy the same? It's very similar, but not the same necessarily as populism, right? Populism is essentially just the people vote and just the people you just tally the number, what the people vote, and then you take it.
I mean, so
and then what we have is people vote for electives who represent them, and we hope. And if they don't like the way their representatives represent them,
right.
if they say, wait a minute, we voted for you to be the voice to care about this, and you didn't do that,
right,
then they vote them out and they get someone else in.
Right.
So that's what a democracy would be. A populist is literally just, you have 100 people in this country, 51 wins.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then also the Republicans, whatever.
And the Republicans
say it's a republic. I don't know what the definition of that is actually.
Does a republic mean like a overruling government?
I don't really know. I don't know if this has so much meaning today, because today's today's modern day Republicans don't believe in so much federal intervention.
No, not at all. They want less of it.
But then everything switched because of slavery.
Why?
Lincoln was a Republican.
Yes.
Right? And he eventually moved to abolish slavery. All the Democrats were the pro-slavery racist, believe it or not. Like everyone was racist, but whatever. Like,
yeah,
those were the Democrats.
Right.
So then everything flipped. So then the Democrats up until now, you think today of Democrats as the super liberals and equality, whatever. The Democrats up until
I don't associate Democrats with super liberal. I just associate Democrats with
more federal intervention.
More federal intervention.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that's only modern. Like, I don't associate that with historically Democratic is kind of just leave me to live the life I want to live, and
no, because
I want the freedom to be able to do whatever I want.
Well, maybe FDR FDR is a Democrat.
Okay.
And to get us out of the Depression, he created a lot of government programs, a lot of government action.
Right.
So that's Democrat. The Democrats then believe.
When was FDR president? That was the 20s.
He was elected 1932.
1932, and this was recovering from the Great Crash after the Roaring '20s.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Great Depression.
So Roaring '20s, things were great. Ish. Really?
Same. We were relying on credit.
Okay.
And then we realized we don't have the money to pay off our credit.
Then we crashed.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so funny.
Yeah.
We just had a party on a credit card, and then we're like, oh shoot, we have to pay our credit card back.
Right. We maxed out our credit cards. But we were partying because we were a big force in winning and the Allies officially winning World War I. So we kind of became the world recognized that America is legit and shouldn't be messed with.
Right. Okay. And then so then he had to come up with FDR had to come up with a plan to recover from the credit card debt and to create a little bit more stability using the reach of the federal government.
Yes. The answer.
How integral was? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
The answer essentially was the federal government is going to invest in the economy.
Correct. Which they still do to today.
Right. The Democrats think it should be more.
But that's what bonds initially were, right?
Yeah, there's that, and there's also just federal programs to get people back to work.
Gotcha. Like the government is funding this project, and we're hiring X amount of people for these jobs.
For example, Social Security. Social Security actually was in the 50s. Sorry.
Well, I'm thinking of something hypothetically, just I guess example. I don't know if exact same way, but I know that in Binghamton when I went to school,
right?
The university was growing, and as part of the way that they kind of gave back to the community was that they would do these construction projects and hire community members. So there's a downtown location with all the bars and frats and sororities,
right? And
then you have the university, which is about 5 miles north, maybe 3 or 4 miles north, and they built a sidewalk because students would walk from downtown to campus. And and kids actually were getting unfortunately killed or hit by cars,
right?
Especially if you're partying, or you're drunk or whatever, and you just end up in the street. And and it was a huge project. And Binghamton and the city of Binghamton, the town of Binghamton, didn't have an enormous economy to begin with, so the university was kind of aiding them and kind of easing them into work to, for the time being by creating these projects that the locals could use.
Right.
That would be hypothetically what the government was doing with the American people.
I think so,
Government being
yeah.
Binghamton in that case,
Yeah,
like the
pretty much.
university, and then the
Yeah.
people being the society that needed the work that.
And then also World War II got us out of the Depression also, because then we were investing in the war, and therefore also more people
Were we part of World War One?
Yes.
How do we get involved? Why do we get involved?
Because there are two reasons. One, because Germany. It was two reasons. I think Germany was trying to use Mexico as a third party to attack the U.S.
Why was Germany trying to attack U.S.?
Because I think Germany thought maybe it was a way of gaining an arm in the war. Again, to this point, U.S. was practicing neutrality, like George Washington said. There were a few foreign wars we were in, but we didn't want to be involved.
Right.
Um,
So we did a pretty good job until World War II.
Germany was plotting
Pretty good job staying out of things.
until World War One.
Until World War One, we were pretty good at staying out of things.
Germany was plotting some kind of attack against the U.S., and we were still sending aid to Britain and France and our allies.
Mm-hmm.
So we were pseudo involved,
right?
And Germany was like, "They just
interesting." Okay, right.
Like,
that should be enough incentive. I feel
it's
like
also kind of like, okay, you're aiding them, we're going to attack you.
Yeah, sure.
And then Germany plotted something, and the U.S. responded by officially declaring war
on Germany.
Yes.
Gotcha. And then World War II came around,
and the U.S. got involved after Pearl Harbor. We initially stayed out of it again,
which I think we also recently. There was something about wanting to get involved in Pearl Harbor, like the U.S. wanting to get involved in World War II. At that point, that was the beginning of the military
Pearl Harbor, they declared
complex.
war right after Pearl Harbor officially.
Yeah,
but we were still sending.
But they were looking for reasons to.
That's what some people. That's an argument that some people say that after wanting to get in the war because the Nazis were winning and it was going to be bad for the world. But again, we just got out of the we're still in the Depression. We're still going through some struggles ourselves.
Yeah, and then we had to buckle up for Vietnam right after that.
20 years, but yeah. Well, Korea was right after that also.
Korea was right after that.
And then we just have a string of getting involved in foreign
Korea
wars.
was before Vietnam?
Yeah. Korea was like 49, 1950.
And then Vietnam was...
Officially, the Vietnam War started in 47, 48.
But we didn't get involved in the 50s, right?
We just sent some advisory troops, like in the 50s. Very minimal. Then JFK sent like 20,000 officials over there, but no boots on the ground. But people will think it was long assumed that JFK's policy would eventually have been to put troops on the ground. And Lyndon
Had he not been assassinated?
Exactly. Then Lyndon Johnson kind of carried that out and put troops on the ground.
Interesting. And both... Was Lyndon Johnson a Democrat?
Yeah. He was the JFK's vice president.
From Texas?
Yes.
Imagine that.
But but the Democrats at that point also were still very much in the South. When the Civil Rights Acts were getting passed, the Democrats in the South turned Republican.
And that's because
the pro-segregation Democrats,
the
Democrats at the time,
the racist Democrats
became Republicans when the Civil Rights Act was passed because Johnson was a Democrat also.
Oh, so they hated Johnson.
They were like, yeah, we're going to become Republicans now.
Interesting. That's how the South became red?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Some states were going back and forth.
But I feel like it's I feel like it's such a different I feel like that the reason why you would go red is long gone.
Yeah, but at the same time, Florida was blue in 2008.
Yeah. DeSantis had a lot to do with turning Florida red, I think.
Right, for sure.
Or at least making it overwhelmingly red. Like I think it was a swing state for many years, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Huh. This is all interesting. So the Bolsheviks were... So that was American politics.
Yeah.
So you have the Senate, which is kind of more powerful than the House.
Yes.
Re-elected every 2 years.
Right.
How many people were in the Senate?
50.
One from each
state.
100.
2 from each state.
2 from each state.
Yeah.
And then the House...
is 462, 469.
And that's based on population of each state?
Yeah, each district is drawn up based on size.
Right. And they're every 6 years.
2 years.
The House.
Representatives are Senate 6 years.
Right. Okay. And are they officially an arm of the executive branch?
No.
They're not.
Legislative.
They're legislative branch. Oh, that makes sense because they make legislation.
Yes.
Right. And so you have the executive branch, which is the president.
Yeah.
And what else? And the Supreme Court.
That's the judicial branch.
Okay. So what else falls under the executive branch?
President.
Just the president.
Yeah.
What are the big bodies, or I guess the cabinet?
Yeah, it's kind of it's all part of the executive branch.
But the cabinet, like J.D. Vance,
He's part of the executive branch, but he's also the president.
but he's also
of
the
Senate.
president of the Senate, which
Yes.
means he's both judicial and executive,
No, legislative.
and legislative
Yes.
and executive.
Technically, yeah. But he doesn't have a say in the legislation. He just like officiates.
No, but like he breaks ties. Like if you had a
he does
tie,
not
like,
break tie.
no,
There's no tie. Actually,
no, he
wait,
could
yes, he does break a tie.
in the
I think
Senate.
Kamala was
Like he was saying that if Tulsi was not going to be, if
Yes.
every Democrat and every Republican voted no and yes, that he would break the tie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kamala was so significant as the president of the Senate because she's a Democrat, and it was 50-50. So when it's tied, she's 51 for the Democrats.
Because she was vice president.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, interesting. Wow. What do you think her career is going to be now? Do you think she's going to be like a consultant?
She's
Like
a lawyer again, no?
I feel like she's going to just get like a consulting job that pays her, or be on a board of something
she
and just
could
get paid
Senate.
a cushy salary and just live her life quietly.
She could run for Senate again.
She could, but I don't know.
Mitt Romney got back in the Senate.
Yeah, but the truth is, I didn't follow politics enough
Right.
to know what Romney's campaign was like. Was it anything as disastrous as Kamala's?
No, I mean, I don't remember so much, but up until 2016, it was still pretty civil.
Yeah, I remember debates used to be civil. Trump ruined the debates.
Pretty much.
Huh.
Israel?
Israel, dude. Israel, dude.
What are you feeling?
Oh, boy. I've never been so unsure about what I think about anything.
I want to make an argument. I want to make a claim.
Okay.
I think Bibi's the prime minister of Israel. Bibi, whatever.
Netanyahu.
You know, but like,
yeah.
but think when it's Bibi, when it's somebody else, whoever, I think that is probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest, jobs
In
the world.
Yes. Yes. Sure.
I think people are demonizing him, and I hear why. I think he picked a very far right cabinet to get back, or coalition
yeah.
to get back into power.
So just to clarify, I'm sorry, just to clarify, anyone that doesn't know.
Yes.
Doesn't know. How do you become prime minister in Israel?
There are elections.
Yeah.
This is to my not. Again, I'm not.
Yeah, sure. But you're
basically
rudimentary over.
There are elections.
Sure.
But not all. But
there's not two parties. There's a lot of parties.
A million parties.
And you can make
you have to be like a majority. You have to be the majority party, and oftentimes an election does not come out with a clear winner. So there's no clear winner.
Why would it not be a clear winner?
I think the majority thing.
Oh, right, because you have so many different parties, it's not easy to get to majority like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So what they do, they create a coalition of parties to get the majority.
Okay.
You create that majority with other political parties, and then the head of that party becomes prime minister.
So do they bunch into one party, or they just say, "Oh, we're all just supporting him"?
It's all a team.
Got it, but they all
They're
just
separate parties, but they support him.
Gotcha.
And each party brings their number of seats into the Knesset.
Gotcha.
So whether it's Bibi, Bibi did this in 22. He was.
But people hated him. People hated him.
People have hated him.
Israelis. Sure. Israelis haven't liked Bibi for a long time.
Right. But I think there's two arguments.
He was so good with public relations, with foreign policy, I guess.
Yes. There's a million questions to ask. Like, people don't like Bibi now. I think one question you always need to ask when you're thinking of a leader is, when you want them out, who's better?
Yeah.
I don't know there's anybody in Israel right now that's better than Bibi.
Okay.
There could be. You know how Benny Gantz is a very popular name. People seem to like him. But do they like him more than Bibi? I don't know.
Right.
It's kind of like, when it was Trump versus Kamala. Like, this is like, who's better? Like, it has to be somebody better, right?
Yeah.
So Bibi in 2022 got a coalition back together to take down. Also, if parties leave your coalition, then the government collapses, forcing elections.
Oh, interesting. So if they say we no longer support you, then you no longer have the majority, and then the government falls apart.
Forcing an election.
Yeah, forcing a new opportunity. So elections could hypothetically happen anytime.
Yes.
Do they happen every set amount of time?
I think so.
But also it could be. So it's formally every X amount of time, every
I
X amount
think
of
so.
years.
I'm still learning it. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So in 2022, BB got a coalition, and in this coalition, he includes some very far right nationalist parties,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think he had done in the past.
Okay.
Meaning that those far
And the
right,
far people are anti-sympathetic or not sympathetic to Palestinians, Gaza, the West Bank,
very pro settlement,
pro-settlement, pro-colonization,
pro war,
pro-war.
not pro calling for the hostages to come back,
Really?
saying they think the goal of the war is to destroy Hamas, retake Gaza, even if that means losing the hostages. Because then their argument is you're saving millions of lives in Israel.
Yes. Well, right,
The argument is Israel becomes a stronger state, and you're keeping the convicted terrorists in prison.
right. Do you think
It's a valid argument.
I-
Also, it's a valid argument. I mean,
what is?
it's a halakhically, it's
Yeah.
also a halakhic argument to it. The far right nationalist people that he's referring to are also firm people.
Right. Right. Do you?
And also, so these far right ministers, these parties have a lot of weight because they go out, the government collapses, and Bibi wants to hold on to power.
Right.
So I don't think Bibi is as right wing as what's
He
being
seems
seemed.
as right as
I think he's
Karen
more. He's definitely right wing. I think Israel as a whole is a bit more right wing.
sees. Yeah. Well, we know that
It's been that way.
It's been that way. So I was listening to a guy named Coleman Hughes,
Mhm.
who's a young guy. He's probably our age. He's very eloquent, very intelligent.
Yeah.
I think he's actually just started teaching at University of Texas at Austin, but he's from New York. And he did a podcast. He was talking about the the right, the population of politically right Jews in Israel, how it's grown so much because Orthodox Jews or religious Jews, who tend to lean right
Right.
in Israel, they have the most kids,
Right.
right? And so if they have anywhere between 4 and 7 kids, a family, or whatever it is, and then the average left-leaning family has 1 to 3 or 4.
Right.
They're literally doubling in size every
Right.
year, and so like between the years, I think it was like between the years like 1980 and 1995 or
Right.
2000, something like that. Like it went from being like 30% right families in public schools to like 78 or 80% or something like that. So like these right-leaning leaders also have an enormous amount of control over a big population of
Right.
religious Jews.
Right. For sure.
Um,
But I do think Bibi.
I never thought of that point, that the whole coalition falls apart if Bibi
Right.
doesn't keep them happy, and then you don't know who's going to replace him.
Right.
That's a really interesting
And
point.
Bibi wants to stay in power.
Well, forget about that. Let's say hypothetically he's ready to move on,
Right.
which I don't think he is. But let's
He's not, but-
let's be charitable,
Right.
and say he wants to find a young version, a JD Vance, right? That he wants
I
to.
don't know if that exists in Israel right now.
I don't know if it does either, right? But he knows that the alternative is worse, and he's kind of being like forced to walk down this
Right.
path. But like I was listening to a podcast with on Sean Ryan show, who's a former SEAL. He's a veteran. He's a former SEAL and Marine, and he had a guy on that worked for the government,
Right.
and there was something happening on the ground that was like time sensitive, and he couldn't get a bureaucratic response because of how much muck he had to go through, and he resigned out of protest. Like he's like, you know what you do, and he goes, and my boss eventually resigned. Also, like what do you do in a position like government,
Right.
where something's happening and you can't stop it? You don't go along with it. You resign and you step down.
Right.
Unless you genuinely feel that the void that you leave is so big and so potentially dangerous that you feel like you don't have that choice to step down. And I feel like BB definitely feels that way because he's seen a lot.
He's seen
He's seen everything.
He's also he could very well go down as like one of the greatest.
But he needs PR. He needs people.
Yeah.
He needs a conversation like this to happen, where he says, and I don't know if it's gonna be him or someone has to advocate for him. I don't care. Someone has to say, "What would you do?" Like if majority of the people are to the right, and no one on the left has any chance of winning a coalition, and if I leave now, then it's gonna be someone worse than me. Like, how come no one's making that? I've never heard the argument in my life, and it's a
Not
great
only
argument.
that, but the government collapses, and then you're losing stability in time of war.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has made that argument, I think.
Yeah. That's a great argument. That's a very BB argument, though. It's very
I
rational.
think I've heard that argument that like we don't want the government to collapse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this whole deal that's been going,
So what they really need is they need a new way to have a government that doesn't
there's no
depend.
constitution, so that's
There's no
basically-
constitution.
But the whole crisis about the hostage deal has been surrounded on the premise: if the government collapses, you're in the middle of a war still.
Yeah,
on
and
all
you have
fronts,
hostages
and you have
in
hostages.
in another country.
And right, that if the government collapses and there's no political leadership, the country's gonna be even in
Yeah.
more chaos.
Yeah.
And I think his
Wow,
job.
dude, that's
So he
dude.
has so many impossible. He had such a bad rap, especially with this ICC arrest
Wow,
warrant.
I'm so happy that you said that.
Like, there's so much bad rap on him from the Biden administration to the ICC. This man.
By the way, even like
in his own government.
even moderate people on the right, independents hate him right now.
Yeah.
Everyone hates him. Far left hates him. Moderate right hates him. Independents hate him.
He is right now.
Warmongers, the only people that like him right now in America.
For sure. Like this man is in a position where he is surrounded by his enemies.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw a stat from a couple months ago that since October 7th, there were probably 26,000 now plus missiles and rockets that have been launched into his country in 1 year.
Yeah.
That man is trying to defend against that from 7 different fronts.
Yeah.
Keep his government
Not
afloat.
7 fronts though. Why?
Yeah.
What's 7 fronts?
Syria's
Syria's been firing rockets.
fired missiles in the last year.
Okay.
Hezbollah and other factions in Syria.
Hezbollah's north.
Hezbollah's north. They
Gaza south.
Gaza south. That's 3. There have been
Iran.
It's
4.
You have factions in Iraq that are launching missiles.
The Houthis.
And the Houthis. That's 6.
That's 6. That is
So you're on
crazy.
6 fronts, and you have the West Bank, who people come in and
Sure.
create chaos.
Sure.
So it's 7 fronts, including the West Bank, that he is fighting a war against. He has a country the size of New Jersey. He has countries that technically there's peace with. Egypt and Jordan, technically there's peace with them. They don't give a rat's poop about Israel.
Well, didn't
They don't-
Jordan help shoot down rockets from Iran?
Yeah, because those rockets are over their airspace, so they have a legal obligation.
Well, yeah.
I
You
don't
think they
think-
care about the legal obligation?
Right,
You
but-
think they're a democracy? They're like, oh, we have to protect the rights of our
Well,
citizens.
technically speaking, Bibi flew in his last trip. Bibi to fly to the U.S.
Yeah.
averted flying over Canada because if he flew over Canadian airspace, they'd have to bring the plane down and arrest him.
Wow.
So there's something about the airspace legality that I think they shot them down.
Wow.
Also, Jordan also doesn't want a regional war.
So the other question,
like Egypt doesn't give a poop. Like Egypt and Jordan still don't like Israel.
so the response. So this is very interesting. I'm just playing this out in my head in real time because the response that I've heard that I would hear is like, come on, you think that Israel is really in threat from Hamas? Like it's like a 5-year-old coming to beat up like a parent. Like Israel
Hamas
is
is the 5-year-old.
Yeah. Right. And in the sense that like, okay, like you go and like, okay, you shoot a couple of rockets, you get a surprise attack, and then Israel goes and they level the whole place in a week. You know, like what do you really like? Do you really feel an existential threat?
Yeah.
But I guess the response would be, well, if the attack is coming from 7 different fronts, there is an existential threat.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a 5-year-old, it's not just Hamas, it's Hezbollah, it's the Houthis, it's Iran, it's okay.
You also saw that Hamas carried out this attack and killed 1,200 people, took 250 hostage, and they had aspirations for more.
Of
We
course,
saw
but
that-
the statement existential risk
Mhm.
would apply far more in a case like the Holocaust,
right.
where we don't have any means of defending ourselves. We're not superior in any way.
Right.
Israel, we are far superior to everyone
Right.
else around us.
Right, but you also have to remember, like, we saw Hamas did this with the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been funded over the last couple of years.
Which
know?
which is something else we could talk about.
And
It's
then
crazy.
you have the art, like, essentially, there's probably the hope in that world that if Hamas attacks from the south, Iran attacks from the east, and Hezbollah attacks from the north, that was
you overwhelm the system.
You overwhelm the Israelis, and
How
you
come
can
they
take
didn't
them
do
down.
that then?
That was the plan.
Was it?
Yes.
But how come it didn't happen?
I think Iran didn't want the regional war. I think Hezbollah also was like kind of hesitant.
So they
And
kind
Hamas
of
went through with it anyway.
You know what that's like? It's like when everyone when he was like, you jump in the pool 1, 2, 3, and like only one person jumps
Like,
in.
Hamas, exactly. I think Hamas' initial plan was that they were going to be joined by these other forces.
Really?
Yes.
That would have been devastating.
Yeah.
That would have been truly devastating.
That was the plan.
That would have been truly devastating.
But also, essentially, and you have Egypt and Jordan again, who there's technically peace with, but since 1948, Egypt and Jordan were leading the charge in attacking Israel. They failed each time
Yeah.
and were forced to make peace. And politically speaking, if they attacked Israel again, they would probably lose their aid from the U.S. They
Yeah.
create an enemy in the U.S.
Sure.
They don't want that.
Yeah, yeah.
But they don't care if Israel goes down.
Right.
So what? Let them turn a blind eye to smuggling and strengthening Hamas.
Wow.
So like so why?
How come people aren't rational like you, dude? I've never heard this argument before, and I've been listening. I've been listening about, and this has been going on for 2 years. I've never heard this argument.
And that's why Israel is doing what it's doing. Like people say it's been much, and there's the arrest warrants, and I hear, Israel.
I'll say it. I agree. I think that I feel like Israel went too far with Gaza right now.
What they're doing, the last wars have always been: we have our skirmishes, Israel attacks more, there's a ceasefire, Hamas rearms.
Yes.
Israel's preventing that.
Well, no, they're not.
That's what they're working to do.
And we could,
that's what they're working to do.
And that's actually goes back. We were talking about this a couple of days ago. That's not the way to end a war. The way to end a war is not to beat the crap out of someone so badly that the few people left remember how poorly they were defeated, and then they get mad, and then they try to build themselves up and beat you back up.
Right.
The point is to say, I don't think this sentiment has been articulated quite enough. Hamas is a problem.
Yes.
The Palestinians that are not actively, pro or participating or contributing to Hamas, every single one of them that dies is a tragedy.
For sure.
And but we're not saying often enough. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Please.
I was saying, what percent? I can't get an accurate read on how many Palestinians actually support Hamas and how many don't.
I can't either. But let's say the percentage is 40% or 60%. I don't know.
I don't like.
Maybe say 70.
Fine.
Say 70. That's 30%. 30% women, children, and elderly.
For sure.
That just want to live their lives, just want to do their things, and the way that I think about it all the pretty often, I don't know if I told you this, but when I don't remember when you remember, I think it was a Shabbos when Iran launched rockets at Israel, right?
Yeah.
And this happened before the elections, right? This is about 8-9 months ago, right?
Yeah, it was in April.
So I was on a jog that night, and I was like, we're sleepwalking to World War III. Yeah. I'm like, because if anything happens, Israel responds. America backs Israel, Russia, China back Iran, and whoever back Iran, and then we have essentially again America, Israel, and whatever allies against Russia, China, Iran, whatever allies, right? And I'm like, fuck that. Excuse my language. I'm like, and I was like, you know why I'm scared? Because I live in America. And I work hard, and I want a family, I want a life, and if Russia decides to blow up Florida or Iran decides to blow up Florida because it's the closest place west to them, and my family and house get blown up,
right?
Screw that, man.
Right.
Like and the helplessness that it happened to de-escalate pretty quickly, but I can't imagine the constant tension, but like the fear of me living. I'm just living in a place, and I'm just trying to raise a family, and just the fear of me losing that is like it's not fair. I just want to live. Like all I want to do is live. Why am I suffering from this stupid, game of chicken between X amount of countries to try to see who's going to give up first and how many people are going to die before that happens, and that makes me, that really made me, that makes me upset.
For sure, but I think the goal ultimately is that, Israel's been in this state of threat and people that want them gone since 48. You know? And the problem is they've seen this time and time again where you have your skirmish and your ceasefire and rearming. That's why they are so gung-ho, though.
Oh, wait. Yes, correct. Sorry, finish the thought.
On doing everything on doing all their salads to make sure that Hezbollah can't rearm and what Hamas can. The issue in 2006.
But now the issue is, but it's not even an Israel thing. So you want to finish your thought? 2006?
Sorry.
Please finish the thought. Yeah.
In 2006, you had the war with Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Yeah.
The UN Security Council created they agreed and enforced a resolution. That's the word. A resolution that Hezbollah must withdraw north of the Litani River, which is far from the Israeli border.
Okay.
Therefore, there's a buffer zone.
Yeah.
And that should be.
Yeah.
And Israel then withdraws to their border.
Yeah.
There's
a gray area where
it's banned by the United Nations forces.
Oh, cool! Really?
And the Lebanese forces, but it failed. Hezbollah stayed in south of this river on Israel's border,
Mhm.
and it went untalked about for years. Israel did not do anything about it because they didn't want a war. The Lebanese forces didn't care. Again, why? Lebanon hates Israel. Lebanon would love to attack Israel, but they've done
Sure.
so and failed.
Right.
Sweet, have the proxy do it. So Lebanon turns a blind eye, and then the UN forces also turn a blind eye.
Right.
Is that more so than not caring? I've read articles that Hezbollah has kidnapped their people and intimidates them,
Sure.
so they can't, for sure, which is for sure probably true. To the point where the UN can't do anything about it. So Hezbollah is hanging out here violating the resolution
Right.
for 17 years until they get their chance to fire again on Israel.
Right.
Israel is saying, screw that.
Yeah.
That can't happen again. So that's part of the reason why they're so hesitant on any ceasefire,
Excellent. So
because they don't. We're tired of this.
I
We're tired
totally
of these
understand.
rockets. We're tired of people firing on us and hating on us.
Yeah.
We just want to live in
Yes.
peace and leave us alone.
Yeah.
It's the same with Hamas.
So I don't have a problem with any of that.
Right.
In fact, I think that's wonderful. And in fact, I mean, I'm
want-
all for. I want that. I
We want this war to end
and
all
we
future wars.
and we know, but well, I don't think it's going to, because they're not playing the cards right at this moment.
So-
if they're trying to set themselves up for that, they're not playing the cards right.
Well, everyone's on at least the U.S. and America, the U.S. and Israel,
Yeah.
and the European allies on the same page that Hamas is not the answer. But you have Egypt and Jordan saying Palestinians need to stay in Gaza, which I hear the people that are free, they shouldn't have to be displaced because that's what happened to the Jews in Eastern Europe.
Yeah. Sure.
Why should we do that to somebody else?
Yes. Sure.
We're better people than that.
Yeah. Sure.
But
No, but
no, I'm saying sorry, not but the other side of the coin is, and where other people are coming from are saying we've done this before,
right.
and it turned out bad for us.
Well, right, but on the other hand, prior to 48,
right.
probably to even the 40s, maybe into the 30s, the Jewish community in Hebron and the Palestinian community
they get along great.
got along great, and Muslims and Jews got along historically great, right?
Right.
I mean, more recently, Jews and Muslims got along better in more recent years than Jews and Christians got along.
Right.
Right. So we know that we could get along. We know that we do exist. We know that
they want to.
Well, here's the thing, right? Exactly. But when they say they is a problem, I think is a problem.
I think it's on both sides.
Does everyone want to?
Exactly, both sides.
Does everyone want to? Right. And so what we were talking about the other day was I know a lot. I've spent a lot of time in Israel.
Yeah.
I have Israeli family.
Yeah.
I have Yemenite family.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
There's a lot of personality there.
Right.
There's a lot of, and I don't blame them. This is literally like, it's got to be genetic. It's got to be like, you are far more defensive, and if you attack me, I'm going to hit you back way harder than you ever hit me before, because we're putting an end to this right now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this in any kind of derogatory way. That's almost like an Arab response as far as I've seen, including Israeli, right? Because a ton of Jews are Arabs too. My grandmother, I'm quarter Arab, right?
Yeah.
I'm quarter Yemenite.
Yeah.
And my grandmother's whole family, she's one of 12 or 13, is depending who you ask, is Yemenite, and their personalities are very strong, and the way that you get change with them is not by bullying them, is by creating a sense of mutual the feeling, and actually in best case scenario, the actual case of mutual benefit, right? Where if you go into business with someone, as long as business is going well,
you're good.
They're the best people in the entire world, right? And they can always count on you. And you can always count on them. And they'll be kind, they'll be loyal, they'll join your families for dinner, they'll buy you presents, and vice versa, by the way. You take care of one another, right?
Right.
I think that the emphasis is on the wrong syllable, right?
Yeah.
I think the emphasis should be on taking out the cancer that is Hamas and encouraging whatever, let's say 30% or 40%, because a lot of Gaza and a lot of Palestinians are young. They're under the age of 20. Like 50% of the population is under the age of 20.
Growing.
They're growing, and they have so much opportunity to be able to be successful. And if you got countries like we were talking about the other day, like UAE or Dubai or Saudi Arabia or anyone that we have a good relationship with in the Middle East now, where I think that Trump is, and I'm sure he has another plan. I hope. I think it's dumb as hell for America to try to take over Gaza.
Uh-huh.
I think it's stupid. And I think that the Gazans aren't going to take it seriously. I don't think the rest of the Arab world's going to take it. I don't think Americans are going to take it seriously.
Uh-huh.
Because America's reputation in the in the Middle East is so tarnished and so blemished and so any association, like, yeah, I think about how many veterans are like, what did we go to war for the last 25 years? How many politicians are like, how many citizens are like, how much money do we spend? How much tax money do we spend on these foreign wars and for what? Right? How do we do that? What happened? So we don't trust America to be the peace, the resolution. We don't trust Israel to be the resolution because you can't take the people that just knocked you down and say, okay, now we're going to take over and now we're going to build you back up again. But you could take someone, hey, we have a mutual friend that speaks your language, that understands you, that works with you, that has worked with you, and they're going to build you up, and we're going to support. We're going to take a step back and just support you guys getting built up.
The problem is that A,
again removing Hamas as leader, and even Israel showing good faith by trying to say, like, for example, imagine a prime university. Imagine a prime a top tier medical center
in Gaza.
In Gaza.
Yeah.
Imagine a generation of Palestinian kids that could get along with Israel the same way that the Palestinian community and the people in Hebron got along for so long.
The thing is,
and everyone's happy.
Is Gaza part of Eretz? I'm asking. Is Gaza part of Eretz Israel?
I don't know, but biblically, if you want to talk about it, halachically and biblically is a slightly separate conversation, and the only reason why
is mentions Gaza.
Yes, well, yes, but it is a little bit more nuanced in the sense that the modern day Israeli politicians and even the early Zionists that were coming to Israel from Eastern Europe and from Russia and from Germany, wherever, they were not, they didn't necessarily have any kind of religious ideals in mind. Right. They wanted a homeland for Jews because of pogroms, and then they would actually they were actually conflicted as to what extent they want the homeland to be. Should it be exclusively Jewish? Should it be a blend? Do we need a government? Do we need an army? Do we need an airport? What do we need? What do we have? And I think that right now those types of questions are being asked and being pushed to or bubbling to the surface more than the Torah question of can non-Jews live in Gaza?
Fine.
Right? I think that's not good. Like, I don't think that question is going to determine the philosophy of Israeli politicians.
I think also then we have to talk, meaning one of Trump's potential purposes was to stir a conversation.
Yeah.
Because nobody else brought any ideas forth.
Yeah.
Then you have the question of, do the Israelis and the Palestinians actually want to live together in peace?
I think that if not the Israelis, if someone that the Palestinians are willing to listen to, Egypt, Qatar, Jordan, UAE, came to the table and said, don't attack Israel for 10 years, and we will, in 5 years, we'll build universities and medical, whatever it is, and then you'll have 5 years to see whether or not you like your life like this.
Yeah,
meaning, and I think that the remaining people, once you root out Hamas, and you have the opportunity now to give people 10 years of an opportunity of a life that's building upward and not building to attack and not building on aggression and not having their funds stolen from them from their leaders that haven't had an election in 20 years.
And they're paying that money to pay murderers.
Yeah, because they have, because think about this, right? If half the population is around the age of 18 or 20, and the last time they had elections was 2006, half these people didn't even have a choice about Hamas. Sure. And they deserve a choice.
For sure. And the PA also. I don't remember the last PA election.
I don't know. I don't know anything about the PA.
It's whatever. It's not good. But also, but here's the thing. I personally don't know if those countries, Egypt, Jordan, and the UAE, have and Qatar, Qatar,
Cutter. Yeah.
have taken the common stance that Hamas needs out.
I think
I
that
don't know if they believe Hamas needs
I
out.
think that if they're part of the Abraham Accords, then they don't want terrorism right now.
UAE
They
is part of
want
the
building
Abraham
up.
Accords.
UAE, Qatar, I think is also.
Qatar and Israel don't have diplomatic relations.
Saudi Arabia is about to be there, or was about to be
Hopefully,
there,
yeah.
and they should be right over the edge.
But Egypt and like
Who else? Who else is part of the Abraham Accords?
Bahrain and Morocco.
Okay, get one of them.
You know, like I don't.
Get one of them.
How many of these countries actually care if Hamas is out or not?
I
don't
think
know.
if they value the business investment that America can make in them, and they care because Arabs again as seriously
Yeah.
like not derogatory, they care about business. When I was in Israel, I used to a lot growing up. My grandfather, who is the Holocaust survivor, bought an apartment, timeshare in
Right.
Israel. He'd go every summer, right? And it's funny because he was a professor and he never had like a ton of money, but like
Right.
that was something he really valued, was going, like he felt as a Holocaust survivor like the state of Israel was the most important thing in
Yeah.
the entire world. And then even, by the way, as a Jew, because the only thing that's promised to Jews is Israel, not even a Torah. Like he like loved Israel. Like anyone that didn't love Israel, that was Jewish, he would like disregard, like completely disregard everything about them.
Right.
Very. I mean, listen, you can't blame the guy, but very strong personality.
Right.
And and there's so you have so Jerusalem, the old city is split up into three quarters. You have the Jewish quarter, the Armenian quarter, and the four quarters.
Christian, Armenian,
Christian,
Jewish,
Armenian, Jewish, and Muslim quarter, right? And people sometimes, especially depending on what the Intifada status was like, or what current the current temperature in
Right.
the region was like, people would be afraid to walk through the Arab Shuk
For
to
sure,
get to the
yeah.
Kotel, right?
Yeah.
To get to the Western Wall. So, so I used to be afraid. And my grandfather said, he's like, if one stabbing
Please tell me this,
happens,
yes.
if one stabbing happens, or one attack happens, or one kidnapping or rape or murder happens, he goes, all these guys, everyone down this row, and everyone in
They're
there
out their business.
lose their business for months. And they don't want that.
Right.
They want to support their families. They want to live, whether they like Jews or whether they don't like Jews, separate conversation. Whether they like Israel or they don't like Israel, separate conversation.
Right.
They have a home. They have a family. They do not want unrest. They want peace. So you can walk through, and whether they like you or they don't like you, nothing's going to happen because it's not in anyone's interest. And I think that's a really, and I think that logic applies to a lot of people throughout that whole area, which is, we just want to live.
Mhm.
We just want our families. We just want to put food on the table. We just want to have time with our kids.
Right.
Like that's all we want. We want a home, and we want what we have now.
Right.
And I think that if you incentivize people that way, and you say you want that, the way to get that is obviously not attacking. Look how well that worked.
Right.
Look how well that worked, and for how long.
But then
So
you
now
have
let's
to
try
get
a new
Hamas out of there.
strategy. So now let's try. So but what we need is we need an Arab country to step up and say that.
But do one of those countries want to? Is the question.
So so Trump should say, or America should say, you better convince him of that, because if you could do the carrot or the stick approach, where we can incentivize you by giving you more, and if you don't, we're not going to do business with you.
Right.
You got to work with us on this.
Right. Because the wars do have to stop.
Because and again, I vehemently do not believe that America should be in Gaza,
Right.
and I vehemently don't believe in America taking over Canada as a 51st state.
For sure.
I think it's so stupid, dude. I don't think we'd want it. What would be the point of it?
Nothing to gain.
There's nothing to gain, right?
Or, like French neighbors that are also citizens. I don't know.
I also saw a great post on Twitter that someone was like, it's like, first of all, it's not just one country, it's like 20, or sorry, not one state, it's like 20 states, right? And second of all, he goes like 52% are Democratic, and like X amount of the population is Democrats, and like, it's like, do you think America really wants an injection of like this large percentage left-leaning, especially into the Trump administration?
Right.
Like it's not like in anyone's best interest. I'm like, that's a really good point. I'm like, yeah, dude, like, way to be. That's really eloquent.
Like cheaper maple syrup.
I don't mind. You know what? I don't buy maple syrup all that often.
Neither do I.
I use it to sweeten my coffee.
Yeah, nice.
I think that's a good Israel conversation. No,
Maple syrup.
no, our conversation just now. That was
nice. It all boils down to the same point. What's BB supposed to do? The question of the hostage deal is: do I get the hostages out?
Oh, and the other thing I want to say is that I hate the notion, like, when you're an American, you remember the movie? Did you ever watch the movie The Trial of the Chicago 7?
Mhm.
You should watch it. It's clean except for language. There's language,
Okay.
but it's very clean otherwise. Like there's nothing
Right.
inappropriate otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's about the 1968 or 69 Democratic Convention, 68, and the protest happened in Chicago, right? So a
Right.
bunch of hippies were coming to protest the Vietnam War,
Right.
and they kept on requesting for like a year or two beforehand, like we need a place to protest. Like we're gonna come one way or the other.
Read timing.
I got another 5 minutes.
Great.
We need another one place or another. Sorry, we need a place to protest because protesting in the streets is a miserable idea for everyone. Just give us like a designated spot for us to go and let us just protest because that's part of American rights, right? Like we have the right to peacefully protest. Chicago kept on saying no, 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 no. They said we're coming anyway, and they came, and then inevitably there was a massive conflict between the police, and then the National Guard was sent in, and then the 7 quote unquote leaders of the protest were held on trial for inciting a riot, and they said, and the whole conversation was whether or not the police acted first or whether the protesters acted first,
Okay.
right? And one of the things that they were talking about throughout the movie, one of the themes of the movie was, they go, "Do you have?" One of the questions that they ask the leader, "Do you have contempt for your government?" He goes, "I might have contempt for my government, but it's nowhere near the contempt my government has for me," And he goes, "I love our country, and I love America, and protest is a means of loving our country. It's a means of loving America because you know what? You say this is my home, and I wish my home could do better. It's like if you have a business, right? You have a business. I mean, the Mesilas Yesharim talks about it all the time. He goes, a good businessman is always checking every aspect of the business to see how well everything is being run, so that it could because if anything gets caught up, then it affects everything else."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, to be critical of America is not to be anti-patriotic. It means that you are patriotic, that you care about your government, and it doesn't. I don't feel like you can criticize the state or the government of Israel without everyone calling you anti-Semitic, even if you love Israel, and if it's like I'm afraid to tell people I think that this war has gone too far.
Mm-hmm.
Because I get attacked and jumped down my throat, and what do you mean, and blah blah blah, and I'm like, I love Israel. I want Israel to succeed. I would live there. I want to live there. I love the place, and it's my and I consider it part of my home.
Right. I think then it all just boils like what's BB supposed to do? You have all these fronts. You could get all the hostages back and release 10,000.
I think it's not even up to Bibi.
Murderers.
It's not up to Bibi. Rhetoric has to be opened up where it's not just shut down as anti-Semitism or not.
Fine.
Where there could be nuanced, intelligent conversation like this one, where you can make really good points and you can make new points that people haven't thought of, can consider, and say, "Oh, I get it now," and then that can lead to change. Like that's what the point of this
But
stuff
it seems
is.
like also usually Israel's not given that right, given that even opportunity. Like the ICC prosecutor was supposed
Right, Israel may not be given it, but other countries need to have it too. Like
sure.
America has to have it. America does not have nuance when it comes to
For
Israel.
sure.
America is you either have Israel's back or you're an anti-Semite, and like you can't be one or the other, and like that's crazy. Like you can say, "I love Israel. This is too much.
Right.
I love Israel. Don't do that. I love Jews. I don't think we should be doing that." And like that's
sure.
great, and like but we don't have that, and
sure.
and I think that the more that opens on the stage, and the more that makes its way to the surface, the more pressure there is to be nuanced, and then even within Israel, it becomes a more nuanced society. Like I think that it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, but when you see Israel's just not given that respect. They're not giving that respect.
They're not giving that respect. They're not.
The UN Women's Rights Council has not condemned what happened to women.
It's insanity.
The United Nations Security Council has not condemned October 7th, the fact that hundreds of hostages were taken.
Yeah. Insanity.
Countries have blamed Israel for the
By the way,
attack.
from countries around the world. Like, if you looked at the initial hostages, it's like over the course of, like, I think 10, 15 countries that hostages were taken from.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like,
there are hostages from China and Thailand and America and, like, everywhere. They didn't care.
Russia, yeah. Like the ICC prosecutor, like, didn't go to, he was supposed to go to Israel, he canceled the last second, then he announced charges. Like, Israel's not given their due process.
Yeah.
Their chance to voice themselves. They're just criticized every which way.
Right.
Seems like.
Right.
So, like, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's a great point. It's a great point. I really don't know. The only thing that I know that we can do is do what we're doing from America.
Yeah.
because I don't know how to solve that problem in Israel.
You know, the last house. That's why honestly, so many people let's go to Israel and say, okay, like the UN, what they say doesn't matter to me right now. I'm in Israel. You know, I don't have to deal with the anti-Semitism out of here. The last hostage deal, Israel released the Yahya Sinwar.
Yeah.
You know, like
How'd that go, right?
exactly. So that's the whole drama now. Do they end the war and keep Hamas in power? Because at the end of the war, Hamas was still in power. They got the hostages back, more than but then you're releasing people who made hundreds of thousands of dollars off murdering Jews.
Yeah.
And we'll do it again. Hamas has said we will do this again.
Well, the question has to really be: is it more important to get them back, or is it more important to move forward?
Right, that's the question.
That's the question. And the problem is that if you keep on looking at how do I get them back, everyone has reasons to get everyone back.
Right.
Everyone, everywhere, has reasons to get everyone back. Like you go back. If you go back 50 years, you have a lot of reasons to get for a lot of countries to get other countries back. You go back 100 years, even more so.
Yeah.
And like at a certain point, everyone has the right to be upset about everything. And the only thing that you really could do is look forward and look to the past to say we won't repeat this, but now let's move forward.
But that's the argument that that right wing side of the government. If we do this deal, we put ourselves at grave risk of repeating this again.
Yeah.
And they don't want that.
Yeah.
And I can't say, I'm not an
well, you have, it's not grave risk.
person.
It's not grave risk because you still have to do all the rebuilding before that even happens.
Okay, but
and while that rebuilding happens, if you use soft influence, which we do, and you use propaganda, and you use negotiations, you use incentives, and you use carrot or the stick approaches, you can still raise people to themselves want to be successful.
But for Iran to send Hezbollah money and weapons, and the Lebanese are turn a blind eye.
No, can't have that.
That's gonna
can't have that.
Those things
can't have that.
Or for Hamas to send it through Egypt and then turn a blind eye, it's not their problem.
And we didn't even get to Israel funding Hamas at any point either. We didn't talk about that at all.
That's
okay. Yeah,
that was the strategy to avoid a war. That was Bibi's purpose. That was what he thought. That was how we avoid a war. Bibi did not want this war by any chance. I don't think.
No way. I don't know if I buy that.
I don't think he wanted it.
I don't know if I think we may have to agree to disagree. I can't imagine. This war was a perfectly timed distraction from Bibi about to be ousted. Tens of thousands of protesters in the streets.
The judicial stuff, yes, for sure.
It's going on for very long. And again, there is an alternative reason why it is going for very, very, very long. I don't know that Bibi didn't want the war.
They were on the verge of the Saudi deal. That was also part of the spar from Hamas.
Yes.
Let's blow up the Saudi deal.
Yeah.
I do not think Bibi wanted this war. I know there was a funding Hamas.
Okay.
From what I read,
I think that if you want, you could be I think that you could be charitable, and you could very reasonably make a good case for Bibi not wanting the war. That's fair.
I think his argument was, the Hamas would always have been an issue that's always gonna be on the table. But he probably thought the best way. I think or what I read, whatever, the best way to deal with it. Let's give them money to build up Gaza, and if they're not in a place where they want to attack us.
Yeah, but they knew that Gaza weren't building universities. They knew that Gaza wasn't doing these, wasn't being productive with their society. They knew that they were using it exclusively for war stuff. Israel, come on, you think Israel didn't know that Hamas was building tunnels? You think they didn't know that they were?
They knew the tunnels for sure. They knew
they knew that they were using the money to siphoning off the money to fund military exercises.
But I think it was more of an active of attempted deterrence.
Maybe, but I think that building again, high tides raise all boats. I think that I think that
they're not that dumb, no. But I don't think I can't imagine that Bibi was sending them money to build a war machine to get into a war.
Right. Okay.
I think that's too. I'm not.
That's a little. That's
far.
That whole sentence is a very far sentence. Yeah. Yes. Sure.
Because all the outcry that's. I don't think the guy wanted an ICC arrest warrant against him.
Well, no one really does. Right? Yeah.
So I would like to think that he was trying to have money sent in order for the hope that
good faith,
build Gaza, good faith, and put Hamas in a position where there's no reason to go to war.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's wrap that up.
Go ahead.
I gotta go teach.
Same.
Dude, lots of fun, man. You gotta go teach too? Dude, every day, man. All right. Bye, everyone. Say bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Nice. Thanks.